Welcome to Comedy 101.
101. 101. At least I perfect the echo, right, Mr.
Mm-hmm.
Bob? Well, welcome. Comedy 101 is created to empower our comedian because we believe laughter is the best medicine.
Oh, there
Don't
you
you
go.
think? Yes.
We're here to prescribe a little laughter
A little
because
laughter.
it's the best medicine.
Best medicine ever. And laugh and laugh and laugh until you can. And
Laugh
he,
until you cry.
yes.
You
What's
can't
the
believe
difference of
it
cry until you
until
cry?
you
I like that.
cry.
I like
Exactly.
that. Until you cry.
Yeah. Hopefully you won't cry. Who knows? Maybe
That's
you
called
will.
happiness, I think. When you cry.
Yeah. Oh, when you cry when you're happy?
Yes.
You cry? I never cry. I have never cried when I'm happy.
When you have too much emotions and then tears coming out. That's called,
No, I
oh,
don't. I've never
tears of,
experienced that.
you did not.
I've been
Wow.
sad and cried, but I've never been happy and cried.
Ha- So that's the opposite, right? That
What's up?
when you're sad, you cry. When you're
Yeah.
happy, of course, you will cry too because in tears that you experience this aloha something
I
that
have I have laughed so much that I've cried.
ah
Maybe because I'm laughing, but it's not like crying like in the same sense. I'm crying because my eyes are watering because I've laughed so much. Maybe
ah
that's what they mean. Maybe I'm
true.
misinterpreting it here. Maybe.
I think so. Yes, you're laughing because
I
there's
think
tears
so.
coming out.
Yeah. Thank you, Daniel. I think you're misinterpreting this, Bob.
I think so because
I think
while
you
you're my
are.
partner, I will support you all the time. So
Well, tonight we're going to talk about the evolution of the comedy album. Do you ever buy any comedy albums before, Daniel?
comedy,
You know,
no, sorry.
like you have you would buy a like pre-digital. You would buy a record of a song,
CD.
but you could also
Uh,
buy the album, and you can also buy an album that's just comedy.
are you serious? There is like
Yes,
that.
I'm serious.
It's my first time to hear Mr. Bob. Sorry. Well, in the comedy world, you are
Well,
professional for that.
yes,
So
the comedy album
enlighten
used to be
us.
a staple of things. Let me give you the history of the comedy album. We'll go through
Okay,
it.
go
We'll
ahead.
go through the history. So
Okay.
the we began at the turn of the century. Oddly enough, just like Train Dreams,
Hmm.
when the comedy album wasn't even a concept. It was a novelty, like a novelty song or a novelty wax cylinder. Before the
Oh,
1950s, recorded humor was dominated by vaudeville sketches and dialect comedy like Joe Hayman's Cohen on the Telephone. But
oh,
the 1950s is what really brought on the comedy album and what they called blue records, which were basically dirty comedy routines on, on vinyl.
oh
And
my.
one of the main stars of that was Red Fox. Now, you
Okay.
may remember Red Fox was in a show when he was older called
Hmm.
Sanford and Son. Do you remember? Did you ever see Sanford and Son?
Well, Mr. Bob, my apologies. No.
Oh well, it was a great show back in in the mid '70s,
70s. Uh huh.
and he was Fred Sanford was played by Red Fox, and Red Fox was this kind of he was actually a dirty comic, but he was really funny. And so then they made a whole show on him. It actually was from a British show called Steptoe and Son.
Mm.
Um, and the guy who played Steptoe was in the movie A Hard Day's Night with the Beatles. He was the
Oh,
old man in A Hard Day's Night that the Beatles were hanging out with. Anyway, I'm digressing here a little bit.
yes.
But
Go ahead.
Red Fox was in the 50s as well as a comedian named Mort Saul. And Mort Saul was probably the first comic to make a comedy album. Uh,
Comedy album.
yeah.
Okay.
So I got a list here of some of the old ones. So I mentioned in 1913, Joe Heyman had a thing called Cohen on the Telephone, which was a bit. It wasn't a whole album. And then Cal Stewart from 1919 had Uncle Joss in a Cafeteria. Again, was more of a bit. Eddie Cantor, who was a singer, had a bit called Tips on the Stock Market in 1929, which that was before the crash, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then in 1922 was the Okie Laughing record. And then when we get into the 50s, we really get into what is considered a comedy album. And there was along with Red Fox, there was another lady called Moms Mabel. And she had a record called The Funniest Woman in the World. Obviously, Mort Saul had a thing called At Sunset in 1955, which everybody says is the first comedy album because it wasn't dirty. It was something you could play with your family, right?
Mm-hmm.
Red Fox had a thing called Laugh at the Party in 1956. Lord Buckley had a thing called Euphoria in 1955, and Stan Freberg, A Child's Garden of Freeburg in 1957. Stan Freberg was a DJ. He was a disc jockey, a very famous disc jockey who started playing rock and roll music on the radio. So all of them were kind of pioneers in their own way for comedy albums. Now, in the 1960s, that's really where the comedy album took off, right? So those were all kind of trials. People made records. Yeah, they made a little money, but it wasn't really that big of a deal. So by 1960, comedy wasn't just a niche, it was a juggernaut because Bob Newhart, if you remember who Bob Newhart was, who was a former accountant, released The Button-Down Mind of Bob Newhart, which became the first comedy album to top the Billboard charts, even beating out Elvis Presley at the time. So this era defined what was called intellectual comedy. Nichols and May were elevating the sketch to a higher. Lenny Bruce was beginning to dismantle the walls of censorship, one recording at a time. And so this is kind of the golden age, right? So some of the comics back then were Shelley Berman, had a record called Inside Shelley Berman. Bob Newhart, obviously The Button-Down Mind of Bob Newhart, which was a huge hit. Nichols and May, An Evening with Nichols and May. Jonathan Winters, The Wonderful World of Jonathan Winters, who was a comedian, from back then all the way till he died. Lenny Bruce, Togetherness. Dick Gregory, who was from St. Louis and was an African-American comedian, is Living in Black and White. The Smothers Brothers, who had their own show, Two Sides of the Smothers Brothers. Stan Freberg, again, the DJ, Presence, the United States of America, Volume 1. And then probably one that we've actually talked about, Carl Reiner and Mel Brooks had 2,000 Years with Carl Reiner and Mel Brooks, which brought us the 2,000-Year-Old Man, which we talked about, right? And the Borscht Belt comics a few episodes ago, right? So it's all these things kind of collided. I don't know what you call it. Maybe call it collided. I don't know. Would that be the term to call it? I don't know.
Intersect.
Intersect. Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm going to share a little bit here. Let's see if we can do this. I'm just going to show you a little bit of Bob Newhart, and hopefully we're not going to play too much, right? But we're talking about this, so we can.
Let's learn from him.
Yeah. So this is from Bob Newhart's The Bit Called.
I said there was a thing in the paper tonight about documentaries, and I've had an idea for a long time for what I think is a wonderful documentary, which has everything. For instance, you go to work, you come home at night, and you never really think about it. It's mechanical, it's routine.
As you can tell,
but there are a group of men who every day,
over the years,
when they go to work, never know if that night they'll return, because they face death in 100 different ways. And I'm talking about America's driving instructors.
There you go. There you go. There's the punchline there. So that's Bob Newhart's Button-Down Mind. You get a taste of what he was doing. And then this is when Woody Allen, you've heard of Woody Allen, I'm sure. He started his stand-up career and had an album called Stand Up Comic back in 1964. So
I think that is good.
Now, once the 60s, started off with a bang, and it just got bigger and bigger. There was and let me see if I can show you some of these here album covers, perhaps. I'll try to do it really quickly here. Oh, where am I? I'm not sharing anymore, am I?
Yeah.
I'm going to share. Here we go. So Von Meter
Okay.
had a thing called The First Family, and he was making fun of the Kennedys back in the 60s, right? So
Oh.
and so that's the album cover from Von Meter, and so it was making fun of what the Kennedys were doing at the White House and so forth. That was a big hit back in those days, and he just basically was spoofing JFK. And then we also have Alan Sherman, who actually wrote a bunch of different songs. If you remember, there was an old song called "Hello, Mada, Hello, Fada, Here I Am at Camp Granada." That's Alan Sherman. And he had all kinds of funny songs. So he was not only a comic, but he also did, funny, one hit. I don't know what you call it, spoof songs, satire songs, perhaps. And then, of course, this guy, he's getting a bit of a bad rap now, but this is Bill Cosby. Bill Cosby became extremely popular in comedy back then. And see, Alan Sherman even produced Bill Cosby. And there's the Cos right there. Obviously, he's in a lot of trouble nowadays. But Bill Cosby, when he was younger, he had an album out that was really quite successful. Some other people that you may recognize are Don Rickles. Do you know who Don Rickles is? You may not, because you didn't grow up in this country, but you may recognize his face. Ron Rickles, hello, dummy. He was we haven't gone to talk about insult comedy very much, but we may do an episode on that. But he is the king of insult comedy. That guy right there, Don Rickles. And oddly enough, he was best friends with Bob Newhart. That doesn't make any sense, does it?
Yes. That's true, Mr. Bob. That's not my story.
But this is also when we had Mom's Mabel was the early one, but we had Phyllis Diller come into being on popular. This is where female comedians became popular, was back in the 60s. Phyllis Diller, oddly enough, lived in Webster Groves, Missouri, which is a suburb of St. Louis. That's where she's from.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I know. I don't know exactly where she lived, but I know where Webster Groves is. And then, of course, no one can not know who this is if you've watched any television or shows like the Oscars and stuff. But it's Joan Rivers. Joan Rivers became extremely popular, and she had her own late night talk show. Obviously, she used to do all kinds of stuff. Let me tell you, can we talk? Joan Rivers had a comedy album there called Mr. Phyllis. But anyway, then it also opened up for people of color in the 60s. So again, Red Fox, he was in the 50s. He was putting out kind of dirty albums, as we'll call them. They were called blue albums, right? But here's Red Fox here, and he's got "Laugh Your Ass Off" with the picture of an ass. There he is. Party album, and he used to do what they call party albums because you play it at a party and everybody be laughing to it, and it was usually kind of raunchy compared to like Bob Newhart, who wasn't raunchy. This was definitely raunchy for him. And then actually when I can remember this guy, and I don't know what happened to him, but he used to have a show in the 70s, and his name was Flip Wilson. Cowboys and Colored People is what his album was called. And then he ended up having a television show back in the early 70s. Flip Wilson, very funny guy. But I would say probably more than anything that exemplified the 60s would be Von Meter. And let's listen to a little bit of that.
Gentlemen, I'm speaking to you from a typical American home in Hyannisport, Massachusetts. Since January of 1960, this family of smiling and happy people have undergone a change. You might say they've been engaged in a new and different type of experiment. Sir, as head of this average family, what was this new experience undergone by you and the members of your household?
Well, after 2 years of brushing with the Crest toothpaste, our group has 21%.
So that's Von Meter. That's what we started out with there, Von Meter, with his comedy album of The First Family. So what's that?
Is that the guy who was at Insulting Comedy, right?
No, that's Don Rickles. Von Meter just made fun of the Kennedys. So he did the Kennedy thing. So this brings us. So once we get past this, we get a lot of counterculture stuff, and one of the biggest counterculture things at the time was the Firesign Theater, and that happened in 1970. So as we entered the 70s, very much the counterculture had took over. Psychedelic audio and things like that, and talking about smoking marijuana. George Carlin, if you remember George Carlin at all, right? He came out in the 70s and was very much a counterculture person that was, very, there's one of his big albums, Class Clown, back in 72. Everything was counterculture. The funny thing is, the counterculture happened in the late 60s, but for comedy albums, it came out in the early 70s. So it always kind of runs behind things. And then we got into what I would call, stoner culture, which would be Cheech and Chong, if you're familiar with Cheech and Chong at all. They had an album called The Big Bamboo, which was the kind of their breakthrough album back in the early 70s. And then you can't talk about comedy albums without talking about this gentleman. His name is Richard Pryor. And Richard Pryor, there he is at the back of the gambling table with an album called Craps. That he did early on in the 70s. And he obviously is a megastar as far as you think of him and Eddie Murphy as probably the two biggest, greatest stand-up comedians ever. George Carlin is up there too, but I think as far as megastars go, he's up there. He's the one, right? Eddie Murphy may have him beat because Eddie Murphy was a little more palatable and didn't get in as much trouble. But there we go. And for Canadians, David Steinberg.
Oh.
See, now David Steinberg had several shows in Canada. This is his comedy album disguised as a normal person. But he had rather large shows in Canada. I don't know if you knew that.
Wow. Comedy album.
Oh, so we got more though. We're just in the 70s. We gotta get up to today still. So Monty Python, who was one of my favorites growing up, had several comedy albums that came out. I love this one because it's all scribbled on. Another Monty Python record. They took a Beethoven cover and just X'd it out and put their name on it. That was the whole bit, right? And then, of course, there's George Carlin was probably one of the, the biggest one at that time period, and he had the 7 dirty words you can't say on television. And in fact, that one
people always want to know how you get started.
Court, and changed law in the United States.
And actors and everything, but they always want to know how you get started. They say, "How did you get started?" Say to you,
"Did you always want to be a comedian?"
Well, not in the womb, but right after that, yes. Sure. But class clown is when you really do get a chance to kind of work out, you know, because the classroom is the best place. The classroom is best because, well, no one's allowed to laugh there. And suppressed laughter, you know, is the easiest to get, the most fun, you know, like when you're kneeling in front of a casket.
So there you go, George Carlin. We won't play too much so we get in trouble. But as the 70s went on, you recognize this guy, don't you?
Oh yeah, Steve
Martin, Wild and
here
Crazy
we
Guy.
go.
Steve Martin, exactly. He came on in the late 70s. So if you had a Mount Rushmore of comedy albums, Richard Pryor in the 70s would be one. Talking about being African American in America, and simultaneously, Steve Martin became a stadium-filling rock star of anti-comedy, using banjos and balloon animals to satirize the very idea of being a comedian. So it was crazy. We had both ends of the spectrum there, right? So that's what's happened in the 70s. Was it all kind of was went from one to the other. And then also you'll recognize this guy. I know you will, because he was a big he was Reality What a Concept. That was the comedy album from Robin Williams back in the late 70s, 79. And everybody at that point knew Robin Williams, and he obviously became this big star in movies and television, Mork and Mindy and so forth, right?
Yes.
But this would have been when I was a kid, when this came out. But the Steve Martin, let's see if I can find it here. It doesn't want to. It didn't give me what I wanted. Just 1 second.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Bob.
Here we are.
Here we go. Yes. Where is it?
Seriously, just for a moment. One of the great art exhibits ever to tour the United States is the Treasures of Tutankhamun, or King Tut. But I think it's a national disgrace the way we have commercialized it with trinkets and toys, T-shirts and posters. And about 3 months ago, I was up in the woods and I wrote a song. I tried to use the ancient modalities and melodies. I would like to do it for you right now. Maybe we can all learn.
You recognize this at all, Dan?
Wow. Enlighten us.
We won't play too much because we'll get a strike against us, right? But
yes, we're gonna strike.
King Tut was a huge hit. That was him doing King Tut on Saturday Night Live back in the late 70s. Steve Martin. So then we get into the 80s, and you can't even mention 80s comedy records without talking about this man right here. And you know who I'm talking about.
Yes, now we are
Eddie
talking.
Murphy. That's his first album in 1980.
Now we're
Eddie
talking.
Murphy, who is still around and still making stuff. He was just in a thing the other day I watched. It's just funny. It's funny how comedy albums, you would think they would have some kind of trend or something, but they don't, because at the same time that Eddie Murphy was getting all these accolades, came another guy who is like the antithesis of Eddie Murphy. It's Rodney Dangerfield, right?
The white.
I don't get no respect. There's Rodney Dangerfield. He was in countless movies and so forth, but you could not get more different between the two people than Eddie Murphy and Rodney Dangerfield, don't you think? I mean, it just is crazy. And then for, as we go into the 80s a little further, you get into kind of the safe ones. And I would say this is one of the safe ones, and that's Billy Crystal, who at the time was on Saturday Night Live when he started doing his Fernando character there. You look marvelous, right? That was his whole bit. I mean, that was it. But he did a whole album about it.
Look marvelous.
He had some other ones too, where he did all his characters. He was an impersonator, right? So Sammy Davis and and you know, he did like a guy from Brooklyn or something. So he had a lot of stuff, but then at least one of the influences, not for me so much, but of the 80s that you cannot overlook, who actually went with Rodney Dangerfield in a couple of movies, was Sam Kinison, who had a bunch of albums out during that time, who was a former preacher, believe it or not, a former reverend who got into doing comedy. And you can see Jesus, Devil, and so forth. He talked a lot about stuff like that, but he had a very short life because he died in a car accident when he was not that old, really.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can't talk about comedy albums without talking about this guy in the late 80s, and that he's around still, but you just don't see him much anymore. Andrew Dice Clay, Hickory Dickory Dock. So he did a whole bit on Little Miss Muffet. And he was friends with Rodney Dangerfield, because by the time Rodney Dangerfield became popular, he had a comedy club, and he would kind of help young comics who he thought who were really good to get, you know, noticed. And one of those people was Andrew Dice Clay. And he's still around. This is Andrew Dice Clay on Joe Rogan's podcast there. He's old, right? But he's still around. He's still doing his thing. So you didn't realize there was all this stuff, did you?
Yes. I didn't realize, Mr. Bob. This is the first time. Album for comedy. Oh.
Now, here is a comedian that is kind of my, he and I share the same name here, Bobcat Goldthwait. And his comedy album, you may recognize him. He was in Police Academy movies. And he is actually a director now. But Bobcat, this is what he looks like today, right there. Bobcat was quite the comedian, had quite the career in the late 80s and early 90s, and still does, actually. He still has a career. He's in a feud with Jerry Seinfeld. They hate each other, apparently. So go figure, right?
Interesting.
You're speechless.
I think I did, because there's an ambulance behind me so much noise.
Now this is the
We've been waiting for a long time.
Eddie Murphy.
Yes, we've been waiting for a long
That's not Eddie
time.
Murphy. That's his opening.
Oh,
Let me get to Eddie here.
Motherfuckers, AIDS. That ain't like the good old days when venereal disease was simple.
the old
So that's
60s,
Eddie Murphy. We can't play too much of that.
70s. Oh my
We'll get in
goodness.
trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but Eddie Murphy.
70s.
So I remember when this movie came out, Delirious. It was there was an album as well, major movie and so forth. The interesting thing is, you know, I talked about Alan Sherman before, and he was also making songs. Well, then this guy you might know. Did a lot of songs as well, spoof songs, and that's Weird Al Yankovic. And so he made whole albums of spoof songs, kind of like Alan Sherman did, but in the mid 80s and so forth. And so he's still doing it, believe it or not. Are you familiar with Weird Al at all?
No, sorry.
No?
No, at all. Who is it, Mr. Bob? Sorry, Mr. Bob.
Weird Al is
my
Weird
mentor.
Al is a musician. He was on a show called there's a show called Dr. Demento Show, which was out east, and he loved to play parody records, and Weird Al sent in a parody record to Dr. Demento. Another one, Rides the Bus, I think was what the first one was, on a Queen song in the late 70s. And Dr. Demento loved it and played it, and then that started Weird Al's career. He actually is an architect. That he went to school to be an architect, but he was so popular with his parody songs that he and there's a great movie called VHF that Weird Al does, and so forth. And there you go. He's still doing it today, 40 years later. Can you believe it? And of course, at some point, you basically get the spoof of the comedy album, which is Spinal Tap, right? So You've seen this movie, have you? This is Spinal Tap spoofs rock and roll in 1984, as well as spoofs comedy and spoofs everything. But they also made an album. They made an actual rock and roll album for the movie, but it's all very tongue-in-cheek and so forth. Now, I can tell you one of the other great people, and his is not so much as a comedy, but as kind of parody, and that is Frank Zappa, who's no longer with us. He had an album called Shake Your Booty, right? A little play on Shake Your Booty, Chic Your Booty. And I listened to this thing over and over and over again when I was younger. This was a seminal thing for us to listen to. And he had several other albums other than this that he put out, experimental music and as well. But yeah, you can't talk about this kind of stuff without talking about Frank Zappa. So we get into today's things, and actually we just made it to the 90s. I don't want our time here. We're going over time. I can't believe I got too much stuff here for you. But you get into you know, the 90s and so forth, and you have to get into Chris Rock and Adam Sandler, right?
Yeah.
So let's end it there, and maybe we'll have to come back to this at some point. But there's
part 2.
Yeah, Adam Sandler singing here. Yeah. They're all going to laugh at you, which was kind of actually it was a little bit of a concept comedy album because it had sound effects. It was like a little movie, but you know, it wasn't you know, what you'd expect essentially. But what came out of this was something from Adam Sandler was the Hanukkah song.
Hanukkah song.
So I'm going to play a little bit of that for you.
Okay, Hanukkah song.
Oh, are we not playing those now? Hold on a second. Am I not sharing anymore?
Yeah, you can share.
Okay, here we go. I must have clicked the wrong button. There we go. Now we're sharing Adam Sandler
Hanukkah song.
You're going to hear the Hanukkah song. This was crazy popular back in the early 90s, mid 90s.
Yeah.
I'll jump forward.
That's a Hanukkah song.
Festival of lights.
There we go. We don't play any more so we don't get dinged here.
Get trouble. Yeah.
But let's end it there, and there's still more. I have still many more things on this, but I'll leave. Maybe we'll do a part 2 next week. How's that?
Yes, part 2, people.
We'll end it up with Adam Sandler doing the Hanukkah song, and that's a good place to end in the 90s. And we'll pick it back up next time. I've got so much because. You know, the crazy thing is, as a kid, I didn't have a lot of these myself, but I had a lot of friends with them. And so we would play the Car album. We would play, you know, all these different Cheech and Chong and all that stuff when we were kids, you know. So it's a great way to get into comedy. It's a great way to just get exposed to everything. And there's so much out there. So now you just go on Spotify and look at comedians.
Oh my goodness, yes. No more album. Sad to say.
That's the sad part, yes.
But it's nice to reminisce.
But the comedy album was huge for, 50 years.
Definitely. So to wrap up this episode, Mr. Bob, would you like to plug in something?
Take some time and listen to a comedy album. Just pick one. Any of the ones we mentioned. We talked about so many things, and you can always come back here to the 101s and go through the catalog here for Comedy 101 and see all kinds of different stuff.
Yes, certainly. So where can they buy now?
And Daniel needs to do this because he has to get more exposure. He's so isolated.
Yes, I'm so curious. Wow, there's an album. I thought it's only for music.
He's like, what are you talking about, Bob? You
So where are you
comedy
gonna buy
albums? What do you mean?
comedy album? So where are you gonna buy the album itself? Mr. Bob?
Yeah.
Where?
Where?
No more, right?
Yeah. You go. I just go to the used record store. There's still lots of used record stores.
You still
Vinyl's
have-
making a comeback. Young people love records right now. So
Mhm. I thought so because nowadays, like, oh my goodness, well, digital is
Mhm.
already everywhere. So when people choose, okay, one click is done.
one
And
click
rather
and done.
than
Yeah,
buy.
it's no fun.
Just go and search the album, look for the album itself. Then
Right,
you
go to
pay
the
in
old
cash
record store and find some more comedy albums. There's probably a ton out there. So
there. What do you call that? Vinyl
vintage.
record. Yeah.
Oh, vinyl. Yeah, vinyl.
Vinyl. Yeah.
There's
So
a place here in St. Louis called Vintage Vinyl.
vinyl.
So
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
go in
So
there.
they're
Yeah, vintage.
vintage people. So, Mr. Bob, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Daniel, and everybody. Go out and get a comedy record. Do yourself a favor.
Yes. Listen to it. It's a legendary. We are doing the part 2 next week, so stay tuned for that. Monica people, see you soon.